how to understand love and giving in families, and the necessity of moving beyond utilitarian love in order to find your true conjugal love as a married couple.
Yeah, identity and mission of the Catholic family. That rests at the heart of the conference this morning, that then led into a discussion of trying to be a family in the digital age with all of its complexities and challenges, and we heard quite a few of them.
There was a lot that a lot of families can relate to. There were talks on addiction, again, something that touches most every family. And again, Christians in the digital age, this is something we're all trying to navigate. We're preparing for the afternoon session. As I mentioned, it'll kick off with a conference on the Matrimonial Catechumenate. And that will set the tone for the panel to follow, which is to train carers and trainers. What do you think we can expect there?
Well, if you're training carers and trainers, in other words, what you're trying to look at here is who is going to be providing the care that we need, the pastoral care, the family care, in the locus of the family, but then giving further training. That includes, of course, pastors and seminarians. There's been a lot of discussion, Father, about training of seminarians, but also the need for priests to be trained.
That's right. I'm also looking forward to this matrimonial catechumenate. I've never heard this phrase before. I'm going to be honest with you. Now, I know what it probably means. A catechumenate is a sort of a stage of pedagogy, a stage of training, and matrimonial obviously refers to marriage. So I presume this is going to be, given what the panel is, a keynote on how to prepare the preparers of those who are going to be married.
Interesting. I love your thoughts on this, because central to the catechumenate is preparing those who are going to be brought into the church.
Yes.
And we have recatechize. But there's an aspect to that does seem, if we're going to torture the analogy a little bit, one of the phases that is so often neglected in all of our RCIA programs, I know the name is changing, is the mystagogical phase, or mystagogy. This idea that after you come into the church, you should continue to be in formation and receiving that care. So often we just send new Catholics out. I'm wondering if that's also a concern here in terms of preparation for marriage.
No, I think that's right. It is a failure in a lot of parishes, just given how most RCIA programs run the academic year. It's the school year, and then there's the Easter Vigil. They might have 1 or 2 weeks of the mystagogical period, but really the mystagogy is supposed to last a year after you enter the church. It is interesting to think about some sort of similar way to accompany newlyweds that first year of marriage, when, I don't know, you guys are both married. I suspect the first year is where everything kind of comes out. Maybe by the first anniversary you've hit your stride, I would assume.
And I think to that, it varies couple to couple. I remember when my husband and I got married, everyone warned us, oh, be careful, this first year is really difficult. We didn't find that to be the case. I think it really does, but every couple will experience suffering at some point. And I think that's another theme we're seeing throughout this World's Meeting of Families as well, the reality of suffering in every single family. You can't get away from that.
And while the pastoral solutions, the doctrinal solutions are always the same, because they work in every situation, the situations in which they're applied vary.
That's right.
And for married life, that's especially the case.
Absolutely. And of course, the theme here has been on motherhood and fatherhood. We are talking about families after all. And with that, let's take a look at this on the importance of fatherhood.
The World Meeting of Families is an opportunity for the Church to focus on the importance of the role of family life in the Church and in society at large. EWTN Vatican's Benjamin Crockett recently got married and just became a father. He spoke with Father John Paul Zeller, the Vatican Bureau's chaplain, on the role of fatherhood.
We can take for granted who we are as persons, as sons, and especially that name, that title, that privilege to be called father. You just had your first child, so you have a little boy.
12 days ago.
You have a little boy now. And that title, that bestowal of a title that was given to me when I was ordained a priest, and I hear it every day so often, bless me, Father, for I've sinned, in a sense, so often when I walk through the streets, just to hear that name, Father, it's such a privilege, and it's such an honor to be called that, and it's sacred. I have to say, I learned that first, to be a father, first of all, in being a son, in being a son of Frank Zeller, Frank and Debbie Zeller. because if it wasn't for my own parents and in being raised in the context of a family, and them teaching me the values that they taught me, the faith that they bestowed on me, that they gave me, I wouldn't be the person that I am. I wouldn't be the son that I am, the brother that I am, and now the father that I am.
Why do you think there's, in our modern society, in some way, a fear of marriage or a fear of having children?
I think a fear of responsibility, a fear of commitment, because maybe in their own lives, people have experienced brokenness. And that's why we need good mentors. I think in any good marriage process and preparation, besides a priest doing preparation, there needs to be good married couples that are walking along with the couple, even 5, 10, 15 years, and even a lifetime into marriage. Hopefully this World Meeting of Families will address, hopefully, is the need for mentors.
It's beautiful to listen to that. And we are joined now by our next guest, Bishop Eric Vardon of Trondheim in Norway. Your Excellency, thank you for being here with us. You've been here as part of the delegation in Norway. What have you made of the World Meeting of Families so far?
Well, obviously, it's only halfway through the program, but I found it enriching. One of the things that the Holy Father always insists on is that we must embody the Christian vision in life as it is, in reality. And I think one of the things which has been admirable so far is the extent to which the reality of human lives have been expressed on stage and been the object of discussion and exchange, and I think that's very enriching.
You know, Bishop, I love to talk about the World Meeting of Families, but there's a question on my mind that I know is going to be on our viewers' mind. You're a prelate, you're a bishop prelate, not of a diocese, but of a territorial prelature, which I've never heard of, actually. I had to look this up. So can you tell us what a territorial prelature is and why it's not a diocese?
Well, I must confess that I also had to Google it in order to find out what it was. Yes, exactly. Well, a territorial prelature traditionally is a fledgling diocese in mission territory. And the territorial prelatures used to be under the direction of the Congregation of Propaganda Fide.
Of the propagation of the faith.
Exactly. So it is a diocese with full rights and obligations, but in a state of becoming.
I see. And how long has it been a territorial prelature?
Now, since it was instituted it was vicariate first since the mid-70s, I think.
Okay. You know, here we have representatives from 120 countries coming together. We're listening to each other, hearing the issues facing their countries right now. What do you want Catholics to know about Norway and the issues facing the faithful there?
Well, I think I'd like them to know that we also in our prelature have 120 nationalities. It is an extraordinarily diverse reality. It's geographically large, demographically small, and extraordinarily diverse. And I always find that it's an interesting and a pleasing paradox that in this situation of the extreme diaspora, you see the Catholicity of the Church so clearly embodied.
What are the challenges that families face, Catholic families face in Norway?
I think the same challenges that Catholic families face everywhere and have always faced. I mean, obviously, our times pose particular challenges, but I think, the fundamental ones of experiencing and constructing families as places of love, of self-giving, self-transcendence, reconciliation, places in which the life of Christ is realized and passed on. Those are perennial challenges, and I think it's always so important to lodge ourselves in those fundamental challenges first, and on that basis to look at the particulars.
It's been beautiful to see the diversity here at the World Meeting of Families, obviously, but also the common threads throughout, as you mentioned. You know, the theme here is family love, a vocation, and a path to holiness. And I'd love to hear, how did your family help to shape your vocation?
I think mainly in a very undemonstrative way, and as something that was taken for granted, embodying those values of unity, I think my sisters and I could always take it for granted that that our parents were there, that they had really given us life and they were leading us through it. Our family was a place where we could be ourselves, but we're all also challenged to grow as human beings and as a family unit. And I think something of that, the harmony, which has really been my experience of family, has been profoundly formative and inspiring.
One of the things, of course, you're a Cistercian, right?
That's right.
So, and now you're a bishop. And, my participation here at the World Meeting of Families, here with EWTN as a religious, there's a lot of similarities between family life and our life as consecrated religious and vowed religious.
Absolutely.
And so I'm wondering how your life as a Cistercian has impacted your life now as a bishop, and how does it reflect as a bishop?
Well, I'm hoping it has an impact.
Well, one would hope,
and obviously,
right?
the monastic life is fundamentally a life of conversion.
Yes.
And the monastic life gives you particular tools for conversion. One of the main tools, obviously, is community life, which is lacking now.
Yeah.
I mean, in formal terms, it's rather an eremitical existence, the one I live now. But I think in informing me to a stable life of prayer, I try to keep that up. And I think creating an instinct for and a desire to foster communities in all sorts of constellations, among young people and old people, and between young and old people, and communities among families. All those things are really important to me. And I found many of those aspirations were in place already, and I simply try to do what I can to foster them.
That fostering of those communities, obviously, an interesting question would be how in Norway do priests help to foster the community of families and the bridging of something very important to Pope Francis, the bridging of this divide you mentioned between the young and the old.
Mm-hmm. But I think one of our advantages in a way is that because we are so small as a church community, we really do depend on one another.
Okay.
And we found that in the context of the synodal process as well, in the synodal year, that a lot of those things that the values that the Holy Father is encouraging us to foster, in some ways, more or less explicit ways, were already in place in our setting, simply because we can't do anything without one another. The life of and ministry of priests really depend on the collaboration and witness and ministry of lay people, and young and old do need to do things together in order to create small communities.
I think that's that is one of the great values of being in a small diocese, is that you really do get a sense. I grew up in a very small diocese in Western Kentucky. You really do get a sense of the church as family when you're in a small diocese.
And it's a wonder, and it really corresponds to the model of antiquity,
yeah.
when the bishop was basically the bishop of the town and a few outlying villages. And you can get to know people, and people can get to know you. That's a good thing.
Absolutely. Well, it's been so insightful and enlightening to hear your perspective, especially to hear what it's like for the life of the faithful in Norway. Bishop Eric Vardon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we will continue our coverage of the afternoon session here at the day 3 of the World Meeting of Families right after this break.
I had a moment of peace the other day where I felt God's presence very powerfully. That's something called spiritual consolation. In those moments, God makes it easier for you to have the right perspective on life. The next day was rough. I hit some really hard news that just turned me upside down. And you know what I did? I remembered that moment from the day before, and I chose to dwell in that peace again. God doesn't just give us moments of spiritual consolation so we can remember them and long for them. He gives us those moments so we can recall them into the present. In a marriage, that time you met and fell in love, that's not something sweet for the past. They're sweet memories that feed the whole marriage. So it is with God. In hard times, recall the times that He's shown you His blessedness. Don't just go to your happy place, go to your God space, and you'll find the right perspective again.
You guys ready to go?
Just about, Mom.
Okay, van leaves in 2 minutes.
Honey, aren't you coming?
I'm kind of tired. Why don't you go to Mass for both of us?
You guys all set?
There's nothing under the sun or about the sun we don't talk about. Every day of the week, EWTN Catholic personalities and experts proclaim and explain the truth that is the eternal word. From challenges at home to issues that are universal, cutting through the clutter to reveal the beauty and mystery of our faith so you can grow closer to Christ and His Church. Go to EWTN for program schedules or watch anytime on demand.
Welcome back to EWTN's ongoing coverage of the 10th World's Meeting of Families right here in St. Peter's Square. I'm Catherine Hadro, joined by Dr. Matthew Benson and Father Thomas Petrie. We're awaiting for the afternoon session to begin. It'll kick off with a speech on the Matrimonial Catechumenate, followed by a panel on to train carers and trainers. You know, we just spoke with Bishop Vardon in Norway. Really helpful to hear from the faithful across the globe, isn't it?
It was really great to hear. You know, it's a very small diocese, and when we asked him about, you know, how priests can help families, he reminded us that when you're in a small diocese like that, you know, the priests really rely on the witness of the families, the witness of the lay faithful. And of course, that really jives with my own sort of experience growing up in a small diocese in western Kentucky where less than 5% was Catholic.
And we're going to continue this conversation on the other side of this break. We'll see you then.
The Church does not exist to condemn people, but to bring about an encounter with the visceral love of God's mercy.
Father Wade Menezes of the Fathers of Mercy can help you respond to God's call with Catholic Essentials, a guide to understanding key church teachings. This book is full of faithful and concise discussions to help you learn about basics of the faith and help you live and defend them in your everyday life. Quickly find answers you need to questions on faith, reason, sacred liturgy, God's mercy, and much more. Father Wade gets to the heart of many church teachings that conflict with today's culture, offering clear answers, explanations, and solutions. Catholic Essentials, a guide to understanding key church teachings by Father Wade Menezes, the latest release from EWTN Publishing. Now available at EWTNRC.com or call 1-800-854-6316.
Don't wait another minute. Now is the time to make your plans to attend the 2022 EWTN Family Celebration. Saturday, October 1st is the day. Phoenix, Arizona is the place. And the theme is Confidence Works Miracles. This is your chance to meet your favorite Catholic TV and radio hosts, Father Mitch Pacwa, Marcus Grodi, Johnette Williams, and you can also take a trip to Father Spitzer's Universe. We'll have Holy Mass and Confession, Family Corner, and you can shop for holy reminders at EWTN Religious Catalog. EWTN Radio will be there with a live broadcast, and kids can have fun learning about their faith at the EWTN Kids Booth. The EWTN Family Celebration, October 1st, the Feast of St. Therese at the Phoenix Convention Center in Phoenix, Arizona. For more information, please visit EWTN.com/family celebration.
Hello and welcome back to EWTN's ongoing coverage of the 10th World's Meeting of Families. I'm Catherine Hadro, coming to you from St. Peter's Square, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Dr. Matthew Benson, the executive editor and Washington, D.C. bureau chief of EWTN News, and Father Thomas Petrie, president of the Dominican House of Studies. We apologize for some technical difficulties that we had a few moments ago. We are preparing now for the afternoon session of the third day of the World's Meeting of Families. It will kick off with a keynote of sorts, a conference talk as it's called, on the Matrimonial Catechumenate, followed by a panel on to train carers and trainers. We spoke earlier with the Bishop of Norway, and it was really helpful to hear insight from the faithful from across the globe. And that is the beauty of the World's Meeting of Families,
it really is amazing. Bishop Vander talked to us about the fact that his diocese is territorial prelature, let's just call it what it
There
really
we
is,
go.
right, is very small. And when I asked him how priests could help families, he said, well, and there's so few Catholics that the priests can't do their ministry without the families and without the lay people. And of course, I grew up in a very small diocese, and you know there are real benefits for being in a small diocese. I think of all the times growing up of the Chrism Mass, you know, that great Mass on Holy Thursday when all the priests gather around the bishop to renew their vows. In most large dioceses, not all the priests can make it. In the Diocese of Owensboro, not only do all the priests make it, but the previous bishop, if a priest wasn't there, he would tell everybody why he wasn't there. Like, Father so-and-so isn't here because he's not feeling well. And so it really was like a family. Like, you'd want to know if someone wasn't at Thanksgiving dinner.
Are they okay?
Are they okay? So it was really quite remarkable.
That's part of the nature of the church as these individual dioceses, future dioceses in this case, are developed. It is that in that tininess, though, that where interesting steps have to be taken for pastoral care, and everybody knows each other for pastoral care. But you can also have real problems simply because of the smallness of the Catholic community. We see that in Scandinavia, for example, where you have a tiny Catholic community, but then you also have the arrival of a lot of Eastern Europeans and others who are sort of changing the landscape, as we see in places like Iceland, where you have a large, I think, Lithuanian population that has come in. You see it in England, too, where English Catholicism has been transformed in a way by the arrival of Eastern European immigrants.
There's challenges and there's also benefits to smaller dioceses, if you will, and smaller parish communities. When I think of the parish life, we've been talking a lot, it's come up several times in different talks, the frantic pace of life today, and how Sundays, a lot of times, the Sabbath is not kept holy even, and people just squeeze in Mass when they can. And I think, you know, another thing that's detrimental about that is that it's hard to, how do you create kind of a rhythm with your parish as well? How do you create a familiarity with those who are in attendance with you at Mass? We've gotten away from that as well.
Well, I know a lot of parishes do that. You know, obviously the joke is coffee and donuts after Mass. You know, are we going for coffee and donuts after this? But it is important, and that's something I know a lot of pastors and a lot of parish staff, pastoral staffs, work on. A lot of it has to do with what the role of the parish is, right? And the role of the parish is to sanctify the parishioners and to build them up into the body of Christ. Now, that can take on many different forms. Some of that might mean participating in parish activities and being active in the parish, but sometimes, especially if you're a family with 5, 6, 7, 8, 32 kids, it probably is going to mean a lot less activity within the parish and requiring a lot more support from the parish and from your parish volunteers, your fellow parishioners. You know, there are lots of stories around the country and around the world of even single people, elderly single people, relying on younger parishioners, you know, crossing the generations that Pope Francis speaks about, or helping each other, where the parish becomes their family or the extension of their family.
I mean, obviously on a lot of our minds right now is the pro-life issue as we await the Dobbs Supreme Court case, which could come any moment now, maybe in about an hour. And another way that the parish is pro-life is by paying attention to, there's a new mother here. Let's create a meal train for her. A lot of it is at that local level.
Yeah, it starts in some ways with who's actually in the parish. You know, a new parishioner has to register.
That's right.
Ideally register anyway. A lot of people just show up to Mass. They don't think in terms of like parish boundaries anymore, which itself is not a problem. It's just a pastoral reality that a lot of people don't settle on one parish. They don't even parish shop. They just find wherever they find themselves. They go to Mass. Thank heavens they're going to Mass.
Right.
So it's that work that needs to be done while avoiding excessive bureaucratization of a parish, of actually knowing who's here and what do they need.
Because time and time again we've heard the need for community support, accompaniment, and I bet we'll hear a little bit more about those themes as well in these upcoming talks. And with that, we take you to Paul VI Hall as the afternoon session is underway with the first keynote speech, the Matrimonial Catechumenate. Here's Paul VI Hall.
prevent the multiplying of wedding celebrations that are null or inconsistent. To access the sacrament of matrimony, engaged couples should develop the certainty that in their union there is the hand of God that comes before them and accompanies them, allowing them to say with the grace of Christ, I promise to be faithful to you always. People cannot promise each other faithful in joy and sorrows, in good health and in sickness, and love and honor each other for the rest of their lives just based on goodwill or hope, on the hope that the marriage will work. They need to be based on the sound foundation of God's faithful love. And for this, before receiving the sacrament of marriage, an accurate preparation is required. I would say a catechumenate, because our life is at stake with love, and you cannot play with love. You cannot just say preparation for marriage and just speak about this in 2 or 3 meetings in the parish. This is not preparation. This is a sham. It's fake preparation. It is not a formal act. We're talking about a sacrament. But it has to be prepared with a true catechumenate. It is a privilege to be here today and listen to the words of the Holy Father again. In listening to his words, some questions come to mind as parents. What is the greatest concern, the greatest worry for us parents when we think about the future of our children? Well, we hope that they will find a way, their own way. And in particular, for us Christian parents, we hope that they will find their vocation. In front of this restlessness and this concern that we all share, the words of the Holy Father that we have just heard are the answer. The document that we have the honor of presenting to you today is the answer that we as families were waiting for. On the occasion of the Year of the Family Amoris Laetitia, the Dicastery for the Laity, Family and Life published the Catechumenal Itineraries for married life. These are pastoral guidelines for particular churches, a very precious document that the Holy Father entrusts to pastors and lay people who work in family pastoral care. The text is aimed at renewing the preparation for marriage for the next generations and accompany our children in their vocation. Today, therefore, we are here for 3 basic reasons: to receive a gift, to take on a task, and to start a process. Just like the Holy Father says, it is a path, a new path as church. It is a process that involves us all and will involve us all, pastors and lay people. And this will call us to be creative, bold, and enterprising, and let us be guided by the Holy Spirit. These catechumenal itineraries are also a sign of the far-sighted leadership of the Holy Father, who once again decided to respond in an effective and tangible way to a true pastoral urgency, taking care of the young people of today who will become the families of tomorrow. And our contribution is aimed at presenting to you the spirit and the motivations that led to the drafting of the itineraries. It is not a ready-made course, what we will be presenting to you, but rather a tool for pastoral reflection, which, starting from a number of general principles, is meant to provide help to particular churches so that they might prepare their own paths or itineraries in the wake of what was suggested by the Holy Father, based on the possibilities and the particular features of each individual place, with freedom and pastoral intelligence. The itineraries are addressed to bishops, to parish priests, couples and lay people in general, who have a responsibility when it comes to preparation for marriage and have responsibilities in pastoral care. And these itineraries can be used in any domain of pastoral care, from those who have responsibility for the catechesis of children to adolescents, including those who accompany the spouses in order to favor the development of a pastoral care that is truly cross-sectoral. We need to gradually change the basic approach of vocational pastoral care so that it explicitly includes marriage next to consecrated life. But what is the cultural context in which this proposal is placed? We're all aware that the contemporary context puts the vocation to marriage to the test. The increasingly lower number of people who get married, the fact that marriages often break up very early, the problem also of the validity of the marriages that are celebrated are an enormous and urgent challenge. As the Holy Father reminds us of, what is at stake is the fulfillment and the happiness of so many people all over the world. We are all worried about the choices our children will make. Will they have the courage of getting married? Will their marriage last forever and built on respect and also on what is good and on trust in God? If we look at the contemporary fragility of marriage, there are many reasons for this hedonistic mindset which distorts the beauty of human sexuality, a limited understanding of the nuptial sacrament as a gift and as an active presence of Christ in our daily lives. The subtle fear of our inadequacy vis-à-vis the commitments and the engagements of married life, the fear of stepping into our own greatness, the fear of becoming a mother and a father. But how can we overcome, how can we vanquish this fear? What is the opposite of fear? Trust. And trust is something, and confidence, it's not something that you can acquire by yourself. Individually, I would have never overcome my fears of becoming a husband if I hadn't met friends who were open and supportive and a welcoming and attentive community that allowed me to understand that there was a design, a plan that God had for me and for us that might help me to trust a provident Father. And I believe this is the essence of the catechumenate that was suggested by Pope Francis, a path, a welcoming path on the part of a community that is able to accompany you, cherish you, and encourage you. Well, why is it not enough to have a short preparation for marriage? Why is the Holy Father asking us to discard the principle of that this is the way things have always been done? Because marriage is truly a vocation. That's not just a figure of speech. It is a vocation that requires discernment, aimed at propelling our children in the future, giving them a more specific Christian identity, making them mature and determined in overcoming the trials and tribulations of life. And in this framework, the celebration of the nuptial rite is in no way a destination. Actually, it is the beginning of a spousal life where husband and wife will acquire a renewed Christian identity, as is the case with priests and men and women religious. And during this life, they will need to be accompanied. The Church devotes a lot of time, the Holy Father states, to the preparation of candidates for religious life, but it dedicates very little time or not enough time to those who prepare for marriage. Why does it take a long time in the seminary for priests, and instead to form two individuals to start a family, just a few meetings are needed? The Lord calls everybody to one vocation or another with the same intensity, just like a priest and consecrated men and women. Lay people are beloved, the children of the Mother Church. So such a huge difference in treatment, the Holy Father says, is not adequate. The couples, married couples, are actually the biggest portion of our faithful, and they are the pillars, the columns supporting the Church in movements and in parishes. From families, vocations are born, and families actually make up the fabric of society, and they can sew up the tears in the fabric of society with their daily patience and sacrifices. We have experienced this during the pandemic. Therefore, it is a duty of justice, the Holy Father states, that the Church devotes greater time and energy to the preparation for those whom the Lord calls to fulfill such an important mission like the family. It is not a matter of preparing someone for a test or an exam. They must be prepared for a life to live. We should not and must not fill vases. We have to light up fires. We have to start fires. We have to prepare the couples better so that they can experience life in Christ. But in order to do so, we have to go beyond the classical, let's say, scheme of courses for preparation of marriage. Rather than courses, we need itinerary, paths, catechumenal paths, just like for baptism, a permanent accompaniment in the acquisition of a Christian lifestyle that is aimed to make sure that amongst engaged couples first and married couples later, that the mystery of grace can re-echo and resonate. It is decisive that they experience the presence of Christ ever since they are engaged, right from the very beginning. Hence, it is absolutely fundamental that such paths last long enough to allow couples to actually mature. Starting from the tangible experience of human love, however, preparation should put at the center faith and the encounter with Jesus Christ. And they should also include stages marked wherever possible and where it is appropriate by rites of passage to be celebrated within the community. We must get used to basically walking this path, along this path, right by engaged people's side, nurturing their growth so that their life can draw upon the faith of the Church, and family life can become ecclesial life. This is why we're all involved as a church, and the Catechumenate has the aim of including and basically making sure that the spouses become part of the community and do not just start a family. Therefore, family is a vocation. Marriage is a vocation, and a vocation requires discernment. How can we help engage couples to engage in a true personal discernment and also discernment as a couple? A lot of dialogue is needed, customized meetings and moments of prayer and celebration of the sacraments, spiritual retreats, phases and rites that marked stages of both human and spiritual growth. What will be needed is also dialogue amongst couples, the involvement of external experts, but also involvement of older couples that have a long experience of married life. We have experienced this during also the time when we were engaged, and we needed to delve into important issues such as our differences, the the need for love and also affectivity. But first of all, we needed to encounter Christ. We needed to understand whether God was calling us to get married. If engaged couples do not know whether they belong to Christ, then how can they build a truly Christian marriage, and not just any marriage, where the spouses only rely on their own strengths and therefore risk not making it in the end? In order to effectively implement a renewed pastoral care of married life, it would be preferable if both accompanying couples in parishes and in movements and priests, right from their formation in the seminary, if they were formed and prepared not only when it comes to content, but also they should be prepared to the mutual corresponsibility and complementarity of their roles in the Church. It is the spirit of synodality that Catechumenate wants to express and basically reflect. We have to prepare for a true ministry of accompaniment of young people to marriage, or even better, to married life. Young people who perhaps are already living together, they might already have children when they go to church to get married. Getting ready and preparing ourselves is necessary to be formed, to engage in accompaniment style which is adequate to the couples we have in front of us. It would be indispensable to have a formation of future formators that are centered around the new challenges of family pastoral care, including issues related to sexual morals, spousal morals, bioethics, that are part of our daily lives, the daily lives of our families. And we should also form priests right from the seminary to work together with lay people, as I was saying earlier, making sure that their formation is guided towards co-responsibility. And in this regard, a greater number of expert married couples could be teachers in seminaries, and more seminarians should experience marriage pastoral care in the parishes. And so the main aim of the itineraries that the Holy Father would like us to embark upon is to favor a complete discernment, both at individual level and as a couple, regarding our own nuptial vocation, to usher us towards the free and pondered decision to get married, or instead, the decision could be in the opposite direction. The couple might decide not to get married and basically bring their relationship to an end. We need to help couples to understand the difference between preparing for the wedding day and instead preparing for married life with that individual. This is why the itineraries are structured, we hope that are structured in different steps, starting from a remote preparation that includes also the pastoral care of children and young people, to instead the marriage pastoral care with 3 stages: a longer proximal stage, a second stage of immediate preparation that is shorter, and then a third step or stage of accompaniment of couples in the first years of married life. And this should be aimed at including the family in the ordinary family pastoral care of the parish, diocese, or eparchy. These itineraries are aimed at linking together right from childhood the discovery of the Christian faith and the initiation to the sacraments with the discovery of the either marriage or religious vocation. It is quite likely that this path cannot be implemented in a short time or devised in a short time. As we were mentioning earlier, we have to set a process in motion to change the style in which we address the preparation for marriage. And in years to come, our younger children will probably benefit from this. Style matters. In implementing these itineraries, what will be essential is the relational style of the pastoral team, be having a welcoming touch, a joy with a charismatic style that becomes a proclamation on the part of the church and the community, especially with respect to people who have a more limited experience of faith, that must be able to see in married couples, experiencing in themselves, that married life is beautiful and is possible. Furthermore, the widespread presence of couples that are already living together and have children who ask to be married in the church requires the development of paths that are centered around the real circumstances of these individuals who need a special care. And in these cases especially, what is needed is a customized or personalized accompaniment. In this case as well, what is important is to make sure that people can mature along the path of faith and conversion. As we were mentioning earlier, the itineraries envisage a remote preparation for children to married life ever since they attend the catechism. I wanted to get married ever since I was a little girl. The example of my married parents and the tangible circumstances of my family, the simplest ones, such as the pictures from their wedding day scattered around the house, the recollection that they always shared with us of the importance of the sacraments during hard times. And in my heart, this has prepared a fertile ground in order to wish to get married. And today there are so many situations, so many families in which marriage, in the eyes of children, does not seem really that desirable. Many children live in situations where marriage is rejected out of conviction, or in situations where the experience of parents is characterized by constant fighting and tensions, living circumstances that make marriage more of a chore rather than something desirable. How can they get or come to the decision of getting married, these young kids, if no one puts them in a situation to realize that they are loved by a father who, for them too, taught about a beautiful vocation of love? What could put them in the situation of discovering that there is a vocation to marriage, considering their difficult experience in their family of origin? To all these children and young people, well, we have to think about them. Remote preparation, so distant, really chronologically. Ever since childhood, this is aimed at preparing the soil, the ground, in which the germs of a possible vocation to married life can be planted. And this will happen if we convey to children the desire to get married. We do not get married because we have to, but because we believe. We believe in the idea of marriage. This is why it's so important to develop the baptismal identity of young people in a perspective of vocation, which can be also a spousal vocation. According to the proposal related to the Catechumenate, this formation process started during childhood but continue with adolescents and young people, so that they do not get to the decision of getting married just by pure chance, and after an adolescence that marked by frustrating and painful emotional experiences, both for their spiritual and personal life. Having this goal clear in our minds, then these itineraries of education for sexuality and affectivity to form our children should not just be limited to prepare them to the total self-giving in love, because today love is interpreted as romantic love. Rather, this should be part of a clear picture, a spousal vision of love. We have to talk about Christian marriage, using the word marriage with our children. Families by themselves really are not able to educate their children to affectivity in view of marriage. It needs the help of the church. So many parents nowadays are not able to talk about sexuality with their children. They really cannot have a very serene, peaceful dialogue based on clear values to accompany their children. And this is why one of the next panels that we have prepared for you will focus on the launching on the platform, where we have gathered a number of programs for education to active activity to help both parents and educators. We have to help each other. Families cannot be left alone in this mission, in this task of saving the happiness and fullness of life of their children. For all these reasons, the pastoral care of married life cannot just be confined to the limited confines of meetings organized for engaged couples. Instead, in a long time, it should involve several domains of pastoral care. We have to avoid a compartmentalized vision of pastoral care, always having in mind this vocational vision to unify and give consistency to the journey of faith and life of each individual. Father Alessandro earlier revealed this. We have been married for 25 years. If there is one thing that today we can highlight in our marriage, one aspect, one feature, is that even if we got married in the faith for many, many years, we were not really too much aware of the grace of the sacrament and of the real presence of Christ in our midst. Unaware of how this presence could have positive repercussions on our daily lives and on the life of our children. Well, we were prepared for marriage almost as if everything ended with the celebration of the wedding ceremony, if that was the end goal that we should pursue, getting married. And this perhaps has contributed to characterizing many of the tribulations that we had to deal with in the ensuing years. The long-term preparation for marriage that is included in these itineraries are meant to sow those seeds so that couples can understand the existential and human implications of marriage in our lives, with the aim of initiate married couples, engaged couples to faith, making sure that they can approach praying together in the life of the church. Of course, helping couples right from the very beginning to then establish right from the very beginning their relationship in the right way and cherish the art of becoming mature men and women. The purpose, therefore, is that of preparing couples to married life rather than to marriage. In our experiences when we were engaged, we had the privilege both to be able to engage in a vocational discernment before marriage, and this allowed us to be certain of our initial vocation. But one thing was missing, however, a path that was aimed at deepening our mutual knowledge, our interpersonal relationship. This has made the first years of our marriage harder in a way, because it is almost as if we were getting to know each other for the first time. And of course, this has meant also seeing good things, being pleasantly surprised, but also being unpleasantly surprised in a way and being disappointed. In the same way, what was missing was that training, let's say, or exercising prayer together. We both cherished our individual lives of prayer, but as the Holy Father says, we were not one in Christ, and tangibly and really we were pursuing different spiritual roads. We know very well that our difficulties are the usual difficulties that all married couples experience, and for this reason, after marriage, then accompaniment should be introduced at least during the first few years as part of the catechumenate. The celebration of the rite is the beginning of a path, of a journey that must take place with the Church, not alone. It's a responsibility that involves everyone, because this means establishing the conditions in order to help spouses to prevent breakups, separations, and suffering. This is why one of the important aspects of the catechumenate is the introduction of the marriage mystagogy. So basically, spouses must be helped in approaching the mystery of the celebrated sacrament, allowing them to understand what happened to them on the day they got married, i.e., they were transformed by the presence of Jesus Christ, whom then through the sacrament basically breaks into their lives. They have to be helped to perceive the signs of the presence of God, knowing that they can turn to Him in daily lives. There are so many new things that need to be learned. And thank goodness, I always, think when there are situations of crisis, oh, thank goodness we have our entire life to learn how to love each other. The duration of marriage, forever, right? It is really a relief, truly. It is a gift because we have all our lives to grow and do better. Marriage pastoral care in this way can become a pastoral care of the bond with the aim of helping spouses to overcome together the hard times, to hold each other in great esteem, and to cherish their marriage and defend their marriage. And it should be a pastoral care of mission. So the spouses should always be reminded of the specific sense of the mission of being Christian spouses. Thousands of Christian families have no clue. They have no idea of this calling to the mission that they receive when they get married in a parish. No one explains that to them. They are the spouses that we should take care of nowadays so that they feel as protagonists in building up the church. The Holy Father has also asked that a special attention would be reserved to the accompaniment of married couples going through a crisis. So many spouses are experiencing profound suffering and leave each other deeply wounded. On this point, the document invites all institutions and parishes to set up a pastoral care service that is dedicated to those who are going through a hard time in their relationship, to safeguard their marital bond and also making sure that these people don't get a divorce. In conclusion, spouses and pastors together were all called upon to proclaim to young people that married life, despite the toils and tribulations, is the answer to their most profound expectations, that the sacrament of matrimony is not an obligation, but rather a gift, a grace that is offered, a help that God makes available to us in order to fulfill the needs of love and to walk together on the path to holiness. And these itineraries that the Holy Father is suggesting to us, this is very complex. Many people will be puzzled and will think that maybe this proposal will not be feasible and there will be a lot of resistant inertia. Many of us will be discouraged by fear and hindrances, but we have to have the courage of doing whatever we can to accompany young people towards the beauty and the abundance of grace of married life and family life. It is a wonderful mission, and what is at stake is the life of our children. For this reason, we would like once again to express our gratitude to the Church and to the Holy Father Francis for this gift, for this task, and for the care that he has shown for our children and our families. So let us overcome any fear we might have, and together let us try to renew the pastoral care of the preparation to married life, for married life. Thank you.
What you just heard was a keynote speech for the afternoon session here, the third day of the World's Meeting of Families. It was on the Matrimonial Catechumenate. And I just want to emphasize what that Italian couple, or the speakers, said at the very end. To conclude, spouses and pastors together, we are called to proclaim to young people that married life, despite the hardships, is the answer to their deepest expectations. That essentially summarizes what their message was. Father, what stood out to you?
Well, I think it was actually wonderful. I was embarrassed a little before the conference, before the keynote, that I didn't know what matrimonial catechumenate meant, and come to find out it's taken straight from Pope Francis's words. Unlike some other programs that want to layer things onto the married life, this is taking something that's already in place. You know, the RCIA, what we mean by a catechumenate and mystagogy, and saying we can do the same thing for marriage. You know, to have a whole process of helping couples to come to know, starting from their youth, right, to come to know marriage as really, as you pointed out, Catherine, the satisfaction of all of their expectations.
It's a very interesting way to roll out a document.
Right.
They're doing so here at the World Meeting of Families, and the full title, it's a mouthful, and at the very end of it, Gabriele Gambino and Giovanni Nuzzi, who are the speakers today, admitted this is a complicated document. We're going to do our best here to unpack this a little bit, having first encountered it, but the title is A Catechumenal Itineraries for Married Life, Pastoral Orientations for Particular Churches. Now, when we're talking about particular churches, we're basically talking about dioceses.
Right.
And what this is I'm struck by the title. It's a catechumenal itinerary. So basically they're looking at this as a journey, as a kind of pilgrimage, a trip, which is a very interesting orientation because you're setting the tone right off of who it's intended for and how you intend to get there.
Something that they mentioned, this couple, they've been married for 25 years, is that many parents have difficulties in knowing how to educate their children on healthy sexuality. They hinted that at the panel that is about to begin in a few minutes at Paul VI Hall. We'll hit on that. They will discuss that because, again, that is something that is very much needed.
It is, absolutely. It's something that we see, and we talked about this yesterday a little bit, but the sexualization of children in the United States, especially with a lot of perverse sexualities or perverse practices. I appreciated so much that they also spoke of how we can begin to help engaged couples truly to discern, and a lot of these things I think we're already doing in the United States. Like, there's a lot of personalized meetings, a lot of priests meet personally with engaged couples, having moments of prayer and spiritual retreats, stages and rituals that mark the stages. I remember Catherine blessing your betrothal to Matt, which is actually in the ritual. A lot of priests don't do that. I think it's a wonderful little rite.
We'll take all the graces we can get.
Absolutely. And, one of the things they mentioned when they were married 25 years ago, they were doing all of those things. What they lacked, and here I'm going to put a plug, I do think we do good with this, or well with this in the United States. What they lacked was learning how to interpersonally communicate. And I think we really do a decent job. I was also happy to see that they mentioned something that we did.
Yes,
which is mentoring you by an older couple.
Yes, that's come up again and again, that accompaniment. And with that, the next panel is actually beginning a few minutes earlier. It's on to train carers and trainers, happening in Paul VI Hall. We take you there now.
Antonio Crespo. They also are father and mother of 6 children, graduated in mathematics, and responsible of the archdiocese for pastoral care in Madrid. They have also worked on affection and on the Juntos Marquedos itinerary. They're both professors at the Madrid University. They are colleagues, and they teach pastoral care of families. They have been speakers in different seminars, pastoral and academical seminars. Antonio is president of Good Love Foundation that promotes at international level affective and sexual education in line with the teaching of the social teaching of the Church. So Antonio and Celia are highly welcome. First of all, good evening. Today we are very glad to be here. It's 28 years ago that we were receiving the blessing of the Holy Father. We were just married and we were here on the honeymoon. So it's a joy to be back here in Rome after 28 years. We would like to thank the Dicastery for inviting us to participate in this World Meeting of Families, and thank for the support given to construct our community. We want to discuss it because this is an initiative of a group of lay people that was conceived to help in the formation of our children. Today, we have to say that the true meaning of love and sexuality is deeply distorted. The image that our children receive of love and sexuality does not correspond to God's desire, and the dominant culture distorts the true meaning of love, sexuality, and corporality. sexuality tends to be trivialized and impoverished and presents to us either as mere amusement or as sole object of search for measure. Access to information today is unlimited, everything being accessible at the click of a button. The symbolic image that our young people have of sexuality is simply pleasure and nothing else. Sexuality education is seen in this dominant culture really very much in also consumption of pornography, and it is sex becomes a product degrading both the one who consumes it and the one who appears in the contents. This disorder in the use of sex tend to progressively destroy the person's capacity to love, making pleasure instead of sincere self-giving the end of sexuality, and reducing the person to objects for one's own satisfaction. On the other hand, the environment in which we live seems to impose an affectivity without limits, a narcissistic, unstable affectivity which does not always help the subject to reach greater maturity. As it was said, it is a romantic love that dies when matrimony dies. Therefore, this the reductionist vision of activity and sexuality can both destroy the person and generate future marital breakups. Due to these two factors, affective illiteracy of our culture and the search for pleasure as the ultimate goal of sexuality, it is very difficult for young people to understand the depth and true meaning of love and sexuality. Affective sexual education can only be understood within the framework of an education for love, for mutual donation. In this way, the language of sexuality is not sadly impoverished, but rather enlightened. Educating means educating to love, and it is therefore important to educate to love, to respond to the call for life and to live it fully. This education is really a path that helps young people to discover the beauty of their vocation to love, and integrating all aspects of the person, and through which the person gives himself or herself totally to the loved one. We must help our young people to learn that love is not only based on emotions and feelings, but it is also a total gift of self. They must learn, and today educating love is all the more necessary as the environment of culture spreads a proposal that disfigure our young people's capacity to love. To educate in love is to help our young people to know themselves, to value themselves, to relate to others, to discover that they have been created to love and be loved, and to know how to integrate that person, the love of God, originally received. To educate the freedom to love is to relate not only to recognize affections, but to learn to integrate them and direct them towards the greater, towards the gift of self, capable of being a true communion of persons. The love of God they have received as first must be turned back. Therefore, teaching sexuality and affectivity is a topic that concerns us very much. We want to guide our children, but they are not sure about how to do it. We don't know how to face this task, and very often we find ourselves puzzled because we don't know how to find how to support them, or we cannot find an appropriate environment for our children to grow. Educating sexuality is not just one of the many dimensions of education. We're all intrinsically full of sexuality, and we understand that sexuality is a gift and that we have a task. We have to work on our person, on our body, because it's not just a fragmented dimension of our being. All our being is full of this, and therefore educating sexuality is part of integral education of the person and must be carried out all through all life. Sometimes sexual and emotional education is seen only as information or as a series of skills, so acquiring some competencies. It is important for us as parents to have a true and authentic education so that adolescents and young people in this physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual change that they experience when they're adolescents can have resources to properly integrate all sexual and affective drives in that vocation to love that we carry as innate in our hearts. Pope Francis clearly says yes to this type of education. In fact, in Amoris Laetitia, he is wondering who speaks of these things today, who has them to prepare seriously for great and generous love. Sex education is taken too lightly. In this sense, the Church considers that there is a need and urgency to give young people a positive, gradual, and prudent, affective sexual education within God's plan and consistently with the teachings of the Church. To avoid the possible disorientation and dangers arising from the present situation, parents and educators need adequate help to turn to that is readily available to them. This help can be translated into programs, educators, parishes, and pastoral realities that help parents in a subsidiary way in this educational task. Affective sexual education is therefore a path, and parents' role has to be interpreted as an accompaniment of children during the whole process of maturation. How can we help parents? How can we support parents and educators along this path where there are so many difficulties? Good Love is a program because it's a community that was conceived to offer this service to parents and educators. Some years ago, in response to the challenge launched by Apostolic Exhortation, the Dicastery for Light and Family and Life invited experts for 12 countries to a 2-day seminar to discuss the need to provide assistance to parents in the effective sexual formation of their children. Following this meeting, the participants saw the need to create the community Good Love. This is an international initiative that gives information and acts to the best resources and programs available all around the world to parents and educators. But what is Good Love? Good Love is a place of encounter, a place of exchange for all those who are committed to providing young people with an education for love in line with Christian value and anthropology. Good Love is especially addressed to parents who are the first and foremost educator of our children, but also to other educators and institutions that work with us in the education of children. The Church recommends the association between parents, so parental association, to get informed, to provide information, to be able to act freely, to protect, maintain, and complete the mission as primary education of children, especially in education to love and in love. And thus, act against the flood of proposals that disfigure their capacity to love. That is why Good Love was conceived as a community. Why is it a community? Because it's not only a reference site for parents to get information, but it's also a meeting place for all organizations and agents that have a common purpose: help young people discover the beauty of love and sexuality. And this characteristic of good love, which is the love of giving, in the name of the association, we see this love because the name is Good Love, so eternal, infinite love, relational love between a man and a woman, a continuous, total love. So what do we offer to parents and educators with Good Love? The Good Love community strives to support and cooperate with parents so that they can fulfill their ministry of love towards their children, so educate children to love. But this assistance never means depriving parents or diminishing their irreplaceable right and duty to form their children. Thus, Good Love is a place where you can receive help for this important task. And the community offers us a directory of effective sexual educational.
We are breaking away from the 10th World Meeting of Families to bring you breaking news that has global repercussions. The U.S. Supreme Court has just announced that Roe v. Wade is overturned, eliminating the U.S.'s constitutional right to abortion. Matthew, what do we know?
What we know is that the decision was by a vote of 6-3. We also know that Chief Justice Roberts concurred in the judgment, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's attached himself to this particular opinion. Okay. We're going to have to unpack this opinion, this decision, to understand exactly what his reasoning was. But it still comes down to the basic fact that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. Roe and Casey. And Father, why don't you read the actual...
That's correct. The opinion itself, written by Justice Samuel Alito, 79 pages plus several pages of appendices. The final paragraph, and it's very similar to the leaked draft. We have to, I'm sure people will want to compare the two drafts, right. But the final paragraph is very similar, if not identical, to that leaked draft. We end this opinion where we began. Abortion presents a profound moral question. The Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion. Roe and Casey arrogated this authority. We now overrule those decisions and return that authority to the people and their elected representatives. The judgment of the Fifth Circuit is reversed.
An important distinction and a very important point from the very moment of the breaking news. This does not declare that abortion is illegal or legal in the entire country. What this does say is that it returns it to the states to decide for themselves.
Absolutely. As I've heard one pro-life leader put it, this is not the beginning of the end. This is the end of the beginning. This is now the battle goes to the states, and we have 50 different territories of what abortion will look like. Kelsey, what is going through your mind as this breaking news comes out? And I do want to emphasize this is breaking news, so we're digesting this live ourselves, and we'll bring you the analysis as everything comes out.
Indeed. Well, I think, first of all, the liturgical significance of the day as Catholics has to be recognized. And today is the feast, the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And I just want to thank every person out there who has prayed for this, who has worked for this, who has asked the Lord and his Sacred Heart for this. Catherine, when you mentioned the states, it goes back to the states. You know, we know that 26 states participated in the petition to have this overturned. We know that before Roe versus Wade was decided, that 30 states prohibited abortion. So, you know, we're looking at almost a reset here to 1973.
Absolutely. Just some more background on this case. That was the historic case to overturn Roe v. Wade. I feel emotional saying this. This is the culmination of decades of prayer and hard work on the ground of the pro-life movement. It is surreal that it's happening, but this has all happened because of Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. focus on Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban brought to the court by Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch. Father?
Reading Justice Roberts' concurring judgment, so he concurred with the judgment. A few justices actually filed concurring judgments. This is often the case. So Thomas filed a concurring judgment, as did Justice Kavanaugh, but they also signed on to the opinion of the court. Justice Roberts, as we know, did not sign on to the opinion of the court, but concurs with the judgment, which is why it is 6-3.
Right. So in layman's terms, basically, he has his own reason.
He has his own reasons
in approaching this question.
So he agrees with the judgment, but he says, I would have taken a more measured course. He was much more, he thought that the case rised and fell on the line of viability, and that's where the court should have kept it.
And that's exactly it, because look at how much more we have learned since 1973 when it comes to the viability of the unborn child. At that time when Roe was being heard, ultrasound technology was at its very beginning, and look how far it's advanced since then.
Well, that's right. And we have seen progressively over the last years states trying to find ways to embrace and recognize that technology, these advances, yes. and then to put them into a legislative form that can reduce the options for abortions to what is now scientifically provable. So this idea that somehow those who are pro-life are anti-science, in fact, from the very beginning, the pro-life movement has been completely scientific, following the latest science.
It's also historic. This case was brought on by a female Attorney General, Lynn Fitch of Mississippi, and she made a point in asking the Supreme Court directly to use this case to overturn Roe v. Wade. And she made the point at how since the 70s as well, women, we can see that you can be a mother and you can pursue a career. You don't have to choose between the two.
Well, Catherine, Roe was, as the leaked draft opinion put it, egregiously wrong. And I think that there were several inaccuracies that it was based upon. Yes. One of the little-known secrets, actually, about Casey versus Planned Parenthood, which reaffirmed Roe, is actually that it vitiated Roe in part. They didn't actually overturn it in toto, but they overturned it in part. And Roe has been wrong for a long time, and yes. I think that regulatory sleight of hand, is it the trimester system, is it the undue burden system, has finally fallen as it should have.
Well, and we can go back to the very beginnings of Roe, that a court tried to find a way to impose abortion on America by basically inventing a constitutional right that did not exist.
Exactly.
Things like the right to privacy. All of this has led to the sort of, I would say, constitutional and legislative and legal chaos that has followed, as well as, I think, when something is built on a lie, inevitably the problems that it creates get worse and worse, and that's what we have seen over the decades.
And that's something that Justice Alito, during oral arguments, and I believe Justice Thomas brought out during the oral arguments, just how complicated the hopscotch, if you will, that the court had to constantly go through because of the lines that Roe and then, you're right, that Casey eviscerated. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg always acknowledged that Roe was bad law. So have a lot of what we would call liberal constitutional scholars who are honest. It was simply a bad case. And my favorite moment of those oral arguments was when Justice Alito, and I'm sure it made it in here, it was in the leaked draft, got the Solicitor General to admit that Plessy versus Ferguson, which enshrined separate but equal, should have been overturned the very next day. It was just the court makes mistakes.
We are going to see an uproar over this.
Yes.
Right before the decision came out, we got word that there was a very heavy police presence outside the Supreme Court. The reality is there likely will continue to be violent attacks on pro-life pregnancy care centers, possibly even churches. We
have seen the whole elements of the pro-abortion movement. I'm not going to try to say that every person who supports abortion is going to agree with this, because we know they don't.
Right.
But there are elements within the abortion movement who not only are condoning but actually engaging in violence. We have seen that since the leak of this decision, the Dobbs decision, what seems like many, many weeks ago. Right. We have seen attacks on pregnancy centers. We have seen attacks on churches. We have seen vandalism. And the expectation is that with domestic terrorist organizations such as Jane's Revenge and others, that these attacks not only going to continue but likely to escalate in the weeks to come.
I think that is likely. Kelsey, I know you've been doing a lot of work with this at Catholic News Agency, covering this extensively, even put together a map for our viewers and readers.
Yes, Catholic News Agency has been covering these stories as they break, from fire bombings to vandalism, and it's been heartbreaking for these women and volunteers who run these crisis pregnancy centers to be at the forefront of this violence. And I think, our thoughts and our prayers certainly go out to them. I know that DHS issued a warning in the last couple of weeks for an increased terrorism threat, which, ironically, actually also cited pro-life groups as incendiary, which is, not the case at all, as we know. And I think the most important thing just to realize is that we can meet this with reason and with faith. Roe was wrong. There was no constitutional right. They tried to find it in the Fourth Amendment, the Ninth Amendment. They settled on the 14th. And as the leaked draft opinion mentioned, it was never anywhere in the Constitution.
It is not a constitutional right. It was never, and this is what Alito's opinion, and this is why it's got several pages of appendices. He goes through the whole historical background of common law and what was legal at the time, when the Constitution was drafted, especially when the 14th Amendment was drafted. And abortion was just simply not illegal in any of these cases.
Again, if our viewers are just tuning in, we have broken away from our coverage of the World's Meeting of Families to bring you breaking news that the U.S. Supreme Court in a 6-3 decision has overturned Roe v. Wade. I can't even begin to emphasize how massive this is. Again, this is something we have prayed for. This is something we have marched for decades. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the U.S. President, Joe Biden, who is only the second baptized Catholic to be the U.S. president, has said that he would take action if, in fact, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Dobbs.
Well, this is going to put a lot of bishops in a difficult position. Especially, we had Archbishop Cordileone on a couple days ago. He's taken pastoral action to try to help Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi to come to understand why her pro-abortion position puts her out of communion with the Catholic Church. The Holy Father himself has said pro-abortion politicians, it places them outside of the communion of the Church. And the communion is for those who are in communion. Now, it goes now, the defense of any president or politician, we're simply trying to uphold what the Supreme Court has said. That goes out the window with this. They're going to actively have to say, we want women to have abortions. And that's going to be a significant pastoral challenge for some bishops.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. But that also raises an important point. You began this announcement with the statement, it's very Churchillian, based on Winston Churchill, that this is not the end, this is not the beginning of the end, this is the end of the beginning.
Exactly.
Sometimes those beginnings can take 50 years.
Yeah.
And yet, now is the time for us to recognize that the real work begins.
Yeah.
On the state level, on the city level, on the family level.
Absolutely.
That all of the resources now are going to be devoted to, that we need to have, are devoted to the care of the unborn, the care of mothers.
Kelsey and I, the other day, were talking about how, that leak came out, was it in April? The drafted leak of this Supreme Court ruling. And again, we're studying this as it's coming out to compare notes and see if it has stayed relatively the same in a lot of ways. But we've discussed how that leak gave the pro-life movement in a lot of ways time to prepare for this. And I will say, we've been preparing for years and decades, but also you almost can't prepare for this, for this day. And so now it's going to differ state by state, and every state looks different. Pro-life pregnancy care centers are going to be on the forefront of this. They are, we've been talking about accompaniment here at the World Meeting of Families. They are who accompany women who find themselves in a pregnancy they were not planning for.
Well, I think, today we also have to give some acknowledgement and gratitude for a lot of the organizations that have worked for years, like March for Life, the Susan B. Anthony, once called the Susan B. Anthony list, now Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, was a significant player in this for years and really helped to galvanize the pro-life movement and has done a lot of the research such that we now know that the vast majority of Americans are, in fact, against abortion on demand. We're probably never going to get no abortions. We're going to keep trying for that. We're not going to settle, but we're going to get a lot of victories early on, I think.
And I think there was a surprising piece in the Washington Post recently where a woman who was unable to get an abortion in Texas actually ended up having twins. And the article, in some ways insinuated, well, isn't that a denial of her right? And yet the beauty of the picture of those twins, the captivating power of life, I think is a message that ultimately cannot be overcome, no matter what the battles are ahead.
I read that piece. The Washington Post tried to make it, paint it as bad news, and it was actually very good news. And that galvanized actually support for that woman and her twins.
The reality of those twins told the whole story.
Yeah.
Two things. The first is what we can anticipate in the next days is going to be rage.
Yes.
Probably violence. We all pray that doesn't happen. But we're also going to see that the media, the secular media, and I dare say some in Catholic media, not very happy about this. The secular media, we know, is fully in support of abortion. And they will see this as a dark moment for American history. So let's be prepared for that. The other is going to be the immediate efforts to polarize and to politicize. And what I mean by that is the midterms are coming up. This is going to become what many would imagine is one of the major issues heading into the midterms.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to see abortion advocates and those in the media stir up this dystopian image, this Handmaid's Tale image of what this means. Again, this idea that not killing your unborn child is repressive.
Yeah.
Which is so diabolical when you look at it at what
it's
that
dark.
is.
It's satanic. Yeah, it's dark.
Absolutely. And so it's, I think, all the more important for EWTN News, Catholic News Agency, EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, News Nightly, News in Depth, to take all these lies we're about to see in the media and then speak the truth, disentangle them, because that's where the devil lives and creating those tangles and webs of confusion and the rage that we're going to see.
And Catherine, I think it's important also that we not let them frame this as a totally negative thing.
Yes.
And that we don't surrender to the cynicism that has at times marked the movement. You know, I think many of us thought we would never see this day. And here we are, you know, with diligence, with putting one foot in front of the other and fighting for the cause of life. We are here at this historic moment. It's a moment, I think, for Catholics especially, to light a candle, to celebrate, to praise God, and to realize that this is the saving of millions of lives. And, you know, I also want to mention one last thing, Catherine, and that's the impact on Latin America. You know, the United States has been a leader in its exporting of abortion and abortion ideology. And we're just seeing Latin America right now in decisions by the Supreme Court in Mexico and other places like Colombia pushing the edge as to what's permissible in those deeply pro-life countries. And now that the United States, who has been the foremost leader, is rethinking this position, there is an incredible moment that we can become the leader of the pro-life movement in the world.
Do you know, one of the things that we've noticed, we talked about it this morning with this whole World Meeting of Families, is the recurring theme in all of these couple stories is that where you are now is not where you're going to be. And today we see that the providence of God over many years has actually starting to turn our country. I go back to what Archbishop Cordileone said the other day, that the reason there's such visceral anger about abortion is because they all know, you know, the seculars know that abortion is the linchpin of the sexual revolution and everything else that we see. This turning around and helping, and with prayer, more and more of this turning around, this is, you know, Our Lady of Fatima said to Sister Lucia that family would be the last battle. That would be the last battle. This means that God has definitely planted his foot, his hand on our country so that we can start to turn on the family.
This is the World Meeting of Families. And on this day, we have the overturning of Roe v. Wade, this discussion about family life. Globally, this is going to have that impact. Kelsey, I thought you said something very important about Latin America. We're also seeing this in whole parts of Europe where we have this demographic winter, partly caused by the abortion culture, by the culture of death, as John Paul II put it. This is a triumph in many ways also of the vision of John Paul II in establishing events like this, where the fires were kept up. Rekindling the fire was one of the phrases that was used just this morning by some of the speakers, of keeping that zeal for family, for the authentic teachings of the Church on life. We're seeing that play out now in a very real way of why we do this, why the Church believes so strongly in building strong families. Without them, this cause would not have achieved what it did today.
That is so well said. I think it's important, as we're talking about abortion and the tragedy that abortion is, the killing of an unborn life, it's important to note that if you have experienced abortion, if you've partaken in an abortion, healing, hope, mercy, it's very much possible for you. And some of the most prominent pro-life leaders are women who have undergone abortions themselves. They've experienced all that comes with that, the emotional, psychological, physical distress that comes with that, and have gone on to speak the truth to help and save others as well. We must emphasize that we know there's a walking wounded in the United States and around the world. I think that's, in fact, why we're seeing so much rage and ugliness. But hope, healing, mercy, forgiveness, it's all there.
I wouldn't want to remove anyone's agency in making those kinds of decisions, but I would say when I think of abortion administered to women who've had abortion, abortion is not something they did. Abortion is something that was done to them, by the culture, by pressures and failures on them. It's not something they did. It was something that was done to them.
Yeah, Pope Francis, throughout his pontificate, contrary to what we hear in the media, and again in some Catholic media, has not downplayed abortion. He has not sort of relegated it to a position of unimportance in the life of the church. Quite the opposite. He's used phrases like procuring an abortion is like hiring a hitman. He's been strong across the board in his defense of life and his condemnation of abortion. That's worth talking about.
Absolutely.
And Catherine, if I can just mention it as well, Father Petrie mentioned all of the heroic organizations that have been on the forefront of pro-life advocacy. And you yourself have interviewed and worked with all of the organizations that have been on the forefront of healing. I think of the tremendous work that the Sisters of Life do, and Project Rachel, and all of the, Rachel's Vineyard.
Yes, there's both.
There's both.
There's plenty of ministries that are out there available, and that is important to let people know. And I think that is the face of the pro-life movement, is that hope and healing and forgiveness. Again, if you're tuning in, the Supreme Court in a 6-3 vote just overturned Roe v. Wade. We're going to continue to bring you breaking coverage right after this break. Stay with us.
Each person has dignity and worth, not because of his physical abilities or occupation, not because of her skin color or status. Each person is valuable, not because of his productivity or age, but because we are human, created by God in His own image and likeness, and neither economics nor emotions should alter the length of each person's gift to humanity.
Welcome to Catholic Blitz, and in the hot seat today is Father Ken Briganti. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Well, your question is, what is the Gospel of Thomas in 1 minute?
Yeah, what is it? No, ever since Da Vinci Code, this all came out, and it is what they belongs to this class of books called the Gnostic Gospels. Okay, they're not true, they're not canonical. Some of them might have a couple of things of kernels of truth, but most of it is not. And so therefore, there are about 700 that claim to be Gospels, and it was the Church and through the guidance of the Holy Spirit, the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, that we came up with the 4 Gospels that we have today: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And that's what Holy Mother Church says are inspired words of text. The others are what we call, all the other 695 belong, or 96 belong to this Gnostic, what we call Gnostic Gospels, and Thomas is one of them. A lot of them use them as pen names for ghost writers, but they figured they'd use these apostles' names to give them some more credence. But they're really just for a certain group of people at a certain time. And that's it.
Oh, you did a good job there, Father Ken. Come back again for more Catholic Blitz.
Welcome back to EWTN. I'm Catherine Hadro, coming to you from St. Peter's Square. We have broken away from our coverage of the 10th World's Meeting of Families to bring you breaking news and analysis that the Supreme Court in a 6-3 vote has voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. And we were talking about there has been so much rage already following this, and the need to pray for our Supreme Court justices.
Well, I think, we should be praying. We saw already the protest outside of the so-called conservative justices. We saw, the man who was sick, but attempting assassination of Justice Kavanaugh. These, especially someone like Justice Barrett, who has children in school, we need to really pray for the justices and pray that God's protection, because the powers of darkness are arrayed against them on this point, and only prayer can really protect them.
Yeah, going back very quickly, this is a 6-3 decision, as you note. Chief Justice Roberts concurs with the opinion, which means basically that his reasoning is slightly different, but he concurs with how we get there at the end. One of the things that we have seen consistently with the Chief Justice is he navigates, in fact, we even talked about this, he navigates what he hopes would be more of a consensus on the court. And he always tries to find a way to bring as much unity or consensus as possible, which I think is, as he himself writes, he was looking for a more measured approach to this. But at the end of the day, he recognized the unconstitutionality of Roe and sided with the majority opinion.
You can't deny it. And looking, again, this is breaking news. We'll continue to look through this and bring more coverage tomorrow as we're still here for the World's Meeting of Families. But some of the immediate media headline reactions have been that this is a deeply divided decision. Kelsey, did you want to react to that?
I just disagree completely. A 6-3 decision is actually not deeply divided at all. And I think, when you look at the American public, I think that there is a movement towards the pro-life side that has gradually been gaining steam since 1973.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that most Americans are against abortion throughout a pregnancy, even though, again, you will see a lot of statistics that are very deceiving when it comes to Roe v. Wade. Father, what are your thoughts as we continue our coverage?
Well, I think what we've already said, that this means we now can actually begin. We weren't even allowed to begin for 50 years.
Right.
I mean, now we can actually begin to do the work of conversion, which we've been doing this whole time, which is why the statistics actually do say the vast majority of Americans are against abortion on demand.
Looking at the short term again, I think this is important. The reaction is going to be what it is. It's going to be we pray not potentially violent. But we're also going to see in states, and in case Kelsey, I'd love your thoughts on this, how quickly some of these states are going to continue moving toward codifying Roe in their constitutions, or moving very quickly to end abortion on the state level, because let's remind everyone, that's what Roe does.
Right.
Yes, there are a number of trigger laws. In these states, abortion is now completely illegal, except with a few exceptions: Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. So there are other states that have heartbeat bans going after a heartbeat is detected.
Right, around 6 weeks.
And potential other states moving forward with less restrictive bans. So I think that there are some interesting things going on in the states, the state of Kansas in particular.
There's a value them both amendment, and there's a vote coming on that which will be very telling. It's the first vote on the abortion issue following the Supreme Court decision.
That's right. That's why this is going to be a very important vote in the state of Kansas. We go back to the states, we'll see what happens. And basically what it does is it asks the question, should life be enshrined in the Constitution of a state? Now, the pro-life movement is more familiar with voting no on things. In this case, you want to vote yes. And what it does is to certify the right to life in Kansas. But there's going now, it is almost certain that there's going to be a large amount of money poured into Kansas to try to make a political point. Each state becomes a battleground.
Especially ahead of the midterms, Father.
Well, one thing that I think is also going to be the next front, not just state legislations, but abortion by prescription. Prescription abortion pills, which can be sent anywhere. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what the legal ramifications and how interstate commerce laws apply and whether those can be banned. But increasingly, women are going to be using those rather than going to a facility.
Major dangerous consequences.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're going to see this black market for abortion pills, frankly, in states where it's illegal. This puts women in so much harm because we don't want abortion ever, but pro-life advocates have always advocated if there's going to be abortion, at least make it safe for the woman. When there's abortion pills, they're taken away from any doctor, nurse supervision. There's clotting. There's been instances of death that have happened, and it's on the rise, quickly becoming the most common form of abortion.
And Catherine, can I talk about the tech censorship that's also a layer in that discussion? You know, earlier in the year, several groups were banned for promoting abortion reversal pills and things like this that can help assist women in if they've changed their mind. And that type of censorship is just atrocious.
Thank you for saying that. And just a quick follow-up to that, when it comes to the reality of abortion pills, there is abortion pill reversal. Look it up, spread the word about this. It's essentially strong doses of progesterone, and it can save the life of your child if you've taken just the first abortion pill.
We were talking a little while ago about President Biden almost certain now to launch some sort of an executive order, which is going to be challenged.
Right.
We're starting now down the road of more legal battles. So this is, again, just the beginning of things. But let's also recognize that there's going to likely be a lot of anti-Catholic fervor. Because we are considered one of the great bulwarks for life in America, one of the great voices for the pro-life cause. So the church is going to be attacked.
Well, this is why when the leaked draft came out, it was Catholic churches that were being attacked. And I think we should not excuse that. I don't think we should shy away from that. There's a reason we were attacked. And I think, I mean, I don't want the Catholic churches to be attacked, but it's not something we should be ashamed of. We're being attacked precisely because Christ is attacked, because the truth is attacked, and the church, the Catholic Church, stands for the truth of the dignity of life and the dignity of the human person.
And the church has been the steadfast voice on this
and they
issue.
know it.
The church has
they
not
know
wavered.
it.
Absolutely.
That we should not pull back from that.
As the bells of St. Peter ring behind us, Matthew.
Well, they should. This is a time for a Te Deum.
Yes.
The Supreme Court, like a lot of institutions, has fallen under heavy criticism, a lot of cynicism. Kelsey, you used that word, cynicism. That's one of the great other perils in all of this, that in response to a decision like this, there's going to be questioning of our institutions, our democratic process, our Constitution.
Right.
We would say that this demonstrates that the system works as the founders intended.
Exactly, and I think the United States is this great experiment, right? And we're about to see the division of the states in a way. We saw during COVID how states vary greatly state to state. We're about to see that to a greater degree when it comes to the abortion issue.
And Catherine, I would just say that that's why there is something that's higher than civil law, and that is the moral law. That's exactly what we appeal to. That's why the discussions about personhood are so important. I think it's also important to emphasize that we need to dispel the myths of politicization immediately. The United States is not the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is against abortion through all time and in every country. This is not a political party issue. This is straight in the heartbeat of the Catholic Church.
This is truth.
Well, and it's natural. It's the moral law, the natural law, and St. John Paul II, Evangelium Vitae, St. Thomas Aquinas, very optimistic people know it. No matter what they say, they know it. And they at least have the apparatus and the structure to know this is the truth.
There are some things you can't not know.
There are some things you can't not know, and this is one of them.
But that also is one of the reasons why we have the rage that we have.
Absolutely, because they know it's wrong.
We are about to be bombarded with so many lies. One lie that comes to mind, I've already seen already in the buildup of this, is that this will just lead to dangerous abortions. But we know that before Roe v. Wade, NARAL exaggerated the number of quote-unquote back alley abortions. They exaggerated it greatly. In fact, Dr. Bernard Nathanson, the co-founder of NARAL, became a convert after Roe v. Wade. He became a convert after seeing an ultrasound for the first time. And he admitted, we inflated those numbers. Again, Roe was built on a lie, and we have seen today on the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus Christ, its destruction.
And Catherine, can we say that there's anything more dangerous than the killing of a person?
Yeah.
I mean, that's already what we're talking about on the table. So,
well, not just killing of the person, as John Paul said, killing a person who doesn't even have the defense of a newborn's cry.
Yes.
You know, he doesn't. You know, you would never kill a newborn who is crying, but the unborn don't even have that defense. A baby's only defense is its cry.
Personhood is the word here.
Yes.
This is a person. John Paul II in Evangelium Vitae strove and spoke about the dignity of the human person in the face of so many threats. we've talked about here also Veritatis Splendor, in which you reaffirmed the Church's moral teachings, the splendor of the truth. This is an opportunity now for us as a church, for us as Catholics, wherever we are, to proclaim the dignity of the human person from conception to natural death.
Yes.
And now it is this culture of life, but this also extends now to so many of the other things that we're seeing in culture.
Yeah.
Euthanasia, assisted suicide, the destruction of an understanding of authentic marriage.
Yeah.
The destruction of an understanding of the human person that John Paul also predicted.
Yeah.
I love that the bells are still ringing.
It's
not
a
that
joyful day.
No, this is not 6 o'clock yet, so it's not the Angelus. But I'm wondering maybe they are ringing it for the Dobbs case.
I think a lot of viewers may be wondering now, our pro-life viewers who have been praying for this and marching for this, what do I do next? What do I do next? The first thing that comes to my mind is reach out to your local pregnancy care center. What are some resources they can use? Can they use some volunteers? What do we think are some other ways? What would you say to viewers who are wondering, what now? This is what I prayed for decades.
Well, yeah, I think getting involved with organizations that are pro-life, I think obviously praying. I loved Kelsey's suggestion, go light a candle at church.
Right.
You know, and above all right now, to give thanks to Almighty God.
Amen.
And gratitude to Almighty God for his providence and his providential way that he has used crooked instruments, all of us, to actually bring about this great good in our country.
Let's also celebrate, but let's be slightly sober about this.
Yeah.
Because we know what lies ahead for us. Let's mourn the 60+ million children who have died since Roe v. Wade, but then also be slightly sober in the abortions that are still going to continue in America.
That's true.
And, you know, my advice would be much more on the simple level. I think, you know, is there someone that you can babysit for who's adopted children?
Yeah.
Is there someone that you can have a conversation with who's wounded by abortion?
Yeah.
And or who thinks differently than you? You know, we need to restore the art of human living and relationships and interaction on an authentic level.
Civility.
I think those simple conversations, those simple acts of love mean a lot in this time. I think we don't want to be defined by anything other than our love. And all of the ways that we can exercise that to God and neighbor are the most important at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't think we can emphasize enough how significant this is on the solemnity of Jesus' Sacred Heart. This is historic. And of course, there's going to be continuous coverage throughout all of EWTN News. This is breaking news. We're going to take a look more into this. Thank you all. I mean, Kelsey,
Catherine, I was just thinking that today is also the hidden solemnity of the birth of St. John the Baptist.
Yeah.
And the World Meeting of Families began with that homily by Cardinal Farrell about the dignity of human life, the sanctity of life. Here we are in this hidden feast day, the Lord, the forerunner of the Lord.
Who recognized Jesus in the womb when he himself was still in the womb.
And one of the points that he made in that very homily was that John was a kind of bridge between the Old and the New Testament.
Yeah.
He used the phrase between eras. Here we are in a new era.
Thank you all for joining us during this breaking news and analysis as the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled 6-3 to overturn Roe v. Wade. We will have much more discussion and analysis tomorrow as we continue our coverage of the 10th World Meeting of Families. But for today, make sure to go to CatholicNewsAgency.com, NCRegister.com, and tune into EWTN News Nightly and all of EWTN News programming to see analysis today. And with that, that's it for our coverage of the 10th World Meeting of Families. But join us tomorrow as we continue right here from St. Peter's Square. All right, and stay here.
Mother Angelica, the foundress of EWTN, once said that what we see and what we read makes us what we are. Mother knew how important it was to watch programs and read books that would deepen our devotion to Jesus and living the Christian life. In her book, In His Sandals, Mother Angelica offers practical wisdom to guide us on our journey toward holiness. In a special summer offer, you can get this uplifting book, along with Dr. Ray Guarendi's Jesus, the Master Psychologist, and The Contemplative Rosary by Dan Burke and Connie Rossini, with a donation of $100 or more to EWTN. Inspirational books like these will help you grow closer to Jesus and reflect His light to others. and your donation will support EWTN's mission of proclaiming the eternal Word. You can get all 3 books for a donation of $100 or more today. To take advantage of this offer, please visit EWTN.com/books, or you can call us at 1-800-447-EWTN. Online and phone donations only, please. Quantities are limited, so make your gift today.
EWTN's coverage of the World Meeting of Families from Rome continues. Later tonight, get a wrap-up of the significant events of the day with expert analysis on the World Meeting of Families highlight show. Tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, here on EWTN.
Father Cedric Pizania. I'm a Passionist priest, and I want to talk to you today about Mary, the mother of all believers. Let me share with you from the Gospel of John, chapter 19. Standing by the cross of Jesus was Mary, his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing by the cross, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her to his home. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. In December of 2015, a secular magazine, National Geographic, had an interesting title. And the title was, "The Most Powerful Woman in the World." And underneath there was a portrait of the Virgin Mary. Wow, imagine that, a secular magazine calling Mary the most powerful woman in the world. Again, December of 2015. And then it talked about how Mary is mentioned in the Bible several times, even mentioned in the Quran, and how universities are named after Mary, such as Notre Dame, cathedrals, churches named after Mary. And so Mary has this influence in all structures of society. And then it talked about the tremendous apparitions that have occurred all over the world, such as Fatima, just celebrated the 100th anniversary of Fatima, and then Lourdes. And then it said that millions of pilgrims come to Lourdes. Some 6 million pilgrims a year come to Lourdes. 7,000 cures have happened at Lourdes. And the message of Mary is always a warning and a comfort. She talks about repentance, coming to Jesus. She's always pointing to Jesus. These wonderful, influential apparitions. A benefactor friend of mine has a home, a condo actually, in Cozumel, Mexico.